Hello and welcome to part 4 of Leading at a Distance. My name is Ute Lorentzen and I am the Managing Director of Impact C&C, which stands for Coaching and Conflict Management. We offer our services to internationally operating companies, to a large extent to those with a German-speaking background. So far we've talked about the challenges of leadership in remote contexts, of international business, and looked into more detail into what geographical as well as cultural distance can imply for leadership and how it can be bridged. In case you haven't been able to follow the first 3 parts, you can find them on our website impact-vc.com. Last time we defined 4 aspects of distance: geographical, cultural, language distance, and what we call organizational or internal distance. All these need the attention of the manager, responsible for the team, the unit, or another entity operating across borders. Today is about how language creates distances. Language, in our view, merits a separate episode because especially the strategies to do with language differences have evolved over the last years. And they do add extra dimensions to what can be done to lead at a distance. We will at first look at some language phenomena that are to be seen in working across borders. The majority of internationally operating companies apply a lingua franca approach as a way to solve language problems. It is the attempt to create an essentially monolingual communication system so that everybody in the company, whether of French or Spanish origin, can become part of the organization and business can be conducted. In most cases, obviously, the lingua franca is English. There are, however, several critical points to be considered. Obviously, English as a corporate language puts native English speakers at an advantage. Also, the original language, may it be Italian or Dutch, of the company is never completely substituted by English on all levels and in all circles. So the, in inverted commas, home language can become the language of those closer to headquarters, and sometimes is a way to more influence and even more power. Furthermore, language competencies in the lingua franca differ between different staff members. Those who have already learned English throughout their school lives, in contrast to those who learn it at a later stage in their lives, those who have a greater affinity to new languages in contrast to those who haven't, those whose second language is English and those for whom it is the third or fourth language, those who manage to find time next to their full work schedule and those for whom this is not feasible. And also there's a time factor. People come and people go in companies, so there will be never one point in time when an equal language mastery of everybody will be established. That means, despite a lingua franca approach, language competencies differ and always will in everyday cooperation for those multiple reasons. It does not in itself eradicate language problems, and it favors some groups over others and may set off power dynamics. If not aware of these, a lingua franca language policy can create the myth that monolingualism can be established in a multilingual environment, and also the myth of equality. The second point is the question of language skills. Less developed language competencies can lead to those team members having less chance to influence, for example, the exact wording of minutes or other documents, but also in the broader sense can lead to limited possibilities to participate on the team level or other company levels, and less chance and more difficulties to make their own perception known and to demonstrate their knowledge and expertise. But on a broader systemic level, and that for companies can be a very crucial point, it can lead to the formation of speech communities, which can constitute sort of parallel societies within a company. As such, these dynamics can in fact constitute mechanisms of exclusion. Most companies foster a lingua franca policy by providing English language trainings to individuals. Developing individual language competencies will definitely help, if only to a certain degree. The objective, however, that everybody might be hoisted to the same level of language competency is somewhat unrealistic, as has been shown. It will not stop what we call the mechanism of exclusion. Focusing on individual language skills in order to assure comprehension, communication and cooperation puts in a sort of way the burden of closing that what is perceived as a gap or a deficit on the shoulders of the individual. From our point of view, the discussion needs for these reasons to be taken beyond the discussion of individual skills. So let's turn to the third point: language competency and performance. It is easy to get the impression that somebody who can express herself and himself well in English in their field is competent. How people can express themselves verbally or in written form can easily be taken as a sign of their professional expertise or even their intelligence. But this conflation of language mastery and professional competency, which we all, I suppose, know from our own experience, is problematic. It can at worst lead to a lessened standing of those colleagues whose language competencies are less developed. It can mean a stumbling block for the recognition of the expertise of staff members and eventually to their career prospects in a team or company. As such, this conflation can be a gateway to exclusion, and leaders need to consciously decouple professional expertise and language mastery, for example, in performance appraisals. Our focus in this series is what people in leadership functions can actively do to reduce and bridge distances. But of course, such steps are best embedded in a corporate policy, in this case, a language policy. One central aim of such a policy should be to counteract exclusion. Steps to be taken in this direction could be, firstly, to acknowledge multilingualism. Every company that operates internationally is a multilingual company. This is a reality, not a matter of strategy or policy. But not many companies acknowledge this fact, even less have an active approach to deal with multilingual reality. Acknowledging multilingualism does not invalidate lingua franca policies, but acknowledges that it also has its downsides and will in fact never establish monolingualism. As we will show, acknowledging the multilingual reality adds layers of flexibility and proposes effective ways to stop exclusion on the basis of language differences. A second path could lead from language perfection to usage. Focusing on language mastery and supporting the individual colleagues to attain it puts, as has been pointed out, the charge on each individual to heighten their language mastery in order to be able to collaborate effectively and efficiently. And in a way, it sets up a threshold by way of which participation and exclusion is determined. Especially linguists and experts in the field coming from countries like Luxembourg or Switzerland, due to their experience with multiple language regions, suggest an alternative approach. They propose altering the focus of a language policy from levels of perfection to language usage. Never mind perfection, the Queen's English, or perhaps now the King's English, the advice is to put the focus on mutual comprehension. We will be coming back to this in more detail at a later point. So let us look at what leaders can actively do. Acknowledging multilingualism on a corporate level is a change of paradigm. Exercising multilingualism in everyday collaboration in your team is called multilanguaging. Multilanguaging focuses on how the different languages and the multiple language competencies can be fruitfully used to heighten comprehension. Multilanguaging can function in several ways. It can be done by switching between different languages. It can be done by using gestures and mimics. Or it can mean switching between several languages in a mode that is called lingua receptive, where everyone speaks her or his own language and understands at the same time the language of the others. In Switzerland, that is often done when working across the different language zones. And it can also mean original forms of language mixing, which you decide on in your specific situations or constellations. What is important about multilanguaging is that it regards the diverse languages and different levels of competency all as resources instead of deficiencies. It also regards all the languages a person speaks as an entity of competence, instead of 1, 2, or 3 separate competencies, each with a different degree of perfection, which are then applied as entities in different situations, but never at the same time. This might sound exotic, but in fact, if you think of the different situations of your international work, this is what often happens anyway. Frequently, also English, the so-called lingua franca, is in itself a hybrid, cobbled together from the set of resources available to the speakers. People in meetings and teams get by in various flexible and creative ways, and the message is this: make it a strategy and start getting really good at it. Try things out with your team. Multilanguaging is not a new dogma, but an additional and flexible strategy with a primary goal to establish maximum comprehension and understanding, and it liberates people and their resources instead of rating people's level of language mastery. The objective is to enable the highest possible rate of participation and level power hierarchies developing on grounds of language. The objective is to eradicate as much as possible stumbling blocks in collaboration and to focus on solving practical problems of daily cooperation. And it is a very strong signal towards eye-level communication and finally eye-level relations in international collaboration. It sets everybody on the same footing, and it is an important step to establish equality of work conditions. The aim is to reconcile two objectives. First, equity, meaning to respect linguistic diversity and not to exclude anyone. Secondly, efficiency. And finally, better outcomes. To return to what was said at the beginning, these strategies are actively counteracting exclusion. And one could say that companies in this way acquire language proficiency. Thanks for having listened. The next and final part will be about internal distance. And as always, watch out or follow us on LinkedIn. We're happy to receive your comments, or if you want to tell us about your experience with leading at a distance, either on LinkedIn or via email. So thanks again and bye for now.